Mount Salak is a volcanic complex located in the south of Jakarta, the island of Java. The area of this mountain series is included in the area of Sukabumi Regency and also Bogor Regency, West Java. The management of the forest area was originally under Param Perhutani, the Bogor Forest Management Unit. But since 2003 it has become an expansion area of Mount Halimun Salak National Park and is managed as Mount Halimun Salak National Park. Mount Salak is relatively old, so it has several peaks. The highest peak is called Salak 1 Peak, with an altitude of 2,211 meters above sea level. Many people think that the origin of the name Salak is from the salak plant. However, it actually comes from the Sanskrit language, namely Salaka, which means silver. So Mount Salak means silver mountain. It is believed that on the slopes of Mount Salak there was once a kingdom called the Kingdom of Salakanagara, which was in the 4th and 5th centuries AD. The name of Mount Salak is also suspected to come from the preposition of the Salakanagara kingdom. According to sources, the history of the Salakanagara kingdom was led by a king with the title of the 1st to 8th king of Warman. The revelation of the kingdom of Salakanagara began with the discovery of the writing of the king of Cirebon who ruled in 1617 Wangsakerta, which was discovered in the 19th century AD. From here, it is known that the first Hindu kingdom in the land of Pasundan was not the Tarumangara kingdom, but Salakanagara. However, this version has not been proven true and certainly requires further research. Another version, and that is circulating in the residents of the slopes of Mount Salak, is the presence of a giant salak fruit. It is said that the naming of Mount Salak comes from the discovery of a very large salak fruit. However, again it is just another version of the legend of Mount Salak, whose truth is still questionable. What is clear is that on Mount Salak there are a lot of patilasan or places to meditate for kings and their followers. The sacred patilasan is spread at various points, such as the patilasan belonging to the king of Pajajaran, namely Prabhu Sri Baduga Maharaja or Prabhu Siliwangi at the foot of Mount Salak in the Bogor area, with a total of dozens of locations. It is said that it was in this land that Prabhu Siliwangi, the king of Pajajaran who brought fame to the land of Sunda, once lived. In fact, some believe that it was in this place that Prabhu Siliwangi disappeared with his soldiers. A temple was also built on the slopes of Mount Salak. The Parahiangan Agung Jagat Karta Tamansari temple in Gunung Salak is said to have been built as a tribute to Prabhu Siliwangi and also his soldiers who disappeared on Mount Salak and are said to have transformed into tigers or tigers. The surrounding community also often finds supernatural things in the Mount Salak area that are related to Prabhu Siliwangi. Before building this temple in 1995, Hindus first built a temple with a white and black tiger statue. It is believed that Prabhu Siliwangi disappeared and transformed into a tiger in this location. So why did you choose to build a temple at that location? It is said that in 1981, the place was known as the Menyan Stone. The Menyan Stone emitted smoke every day. It is said that the surrounding community every day sees white light and bright rays from the sky and then descends to the rocks. With this myth, it is not surprising that Mount Salak is a famous haunted mountain. Many climbers are lost because they are lost. So far, not a few climbers of Mount Salak admitted that they have heard the sound of gamelan or seen apparitions of spirit creatures when climbing Mount Salak. Climbers are also advised not to say dirty words or harsh words during the trip. The goal is to avoid disturbances of the soft or waiting for Mount Salak. Mount Salak has been known to be haunted, both by climbers and for the aviation community. Not a few climbers got lost, went missing, and died on Mount Salak. Likewise with the world of aviation. At least 7 planes crashed on the slopes of Mount Salak, which has these 2 peaks. In addition to being one of the beautiful mountains, it is said that Mount Salak is also referred to as the Mountain of Tarankar in West Java and is also full of a million mysteries. The awesomeness of Mount Salak is not only recognized by the surrounding community but also by the people of the Netherlands and also the Japanese when they colonized Indonesia. So, there is a story when the Japanese army entered Indonesia in 1942. There were merchants and Netherlands soldiers who had the initiative to bury their treasures on Mount Salak for fear of being seized by the Allies. They chose Mount Salak because the place is known to be winged and is not easily reached by humans. Thus, they hope to be able to take the relics again after Japan leaves Indonesia later. However, after Indonesia proclaimed its independence, the Netherlands could not enter our country. And while their treasures are still hidden in Indonesia, the news of the treasure pile then spread among the Sadahu people who lived on the slopes of Mount Salak, where they then collapsed the Netherlands heritage wall en masse so that it became debris to search for the treasure. However, in reality, no treasure was obtained. There are many residents who died in the mission. Some suspect that the treasure was hidden by the jinn, so that ordinary humans could not find it. Another myth is related to the legend or mystery of Mount Salak. At several points on Mount Salak, which is considered a sacred and haunted place, this mountain climbing path often costs lives that sometimes cannot be found by the SAR team. In addition, in the Ratu crater and the Thousand Waterfall, there are also often people who see the appearance of evil spirits that make humans go astray to stretch their lives. Most climbers will be lost here, because they are said to be misled by spirit creatures. Climbers who get lost at this point will usually feel their name being called. Furthermore, they will be misled in the supernatural realm. On the other hand, on Mount Salak there is also a myth that there is a supernatural kingdom. It is said that there is a supernatural kingdom, namely the kingdom of Pajajaran. This kingdom is located in the western region of the island of Java and was established in 1030 AD. Even though the Pajajaran kingdom had collapsed, even before the Netherlands entered Indonesia, the people around Mount Salak still believed that the spirits of the inhabitants of the Pajajaran kingdom were actually still in the location, including the spirit of the king, namely Prabu Siliwangi. Then there is also a mystery about the magnetic force on Mount Salak. This is evidenced by the many incidents of missing aircraft in the Mount Salak area. Aircraft usually lose their direction or are not detected by radar when passing over this mountain. One of the plane accidents that occurred in the Mount Salak area and had shocked the international world was the Sukhoi Superjet 100 aircraft accident in 2012. This plane accident killed around 45 passengers of Indonesia citizens and also foreign citizens. Previously, there were also many aircraft accidents of more than 7 incidents. Then, there is also a myth about a mystical story related to the sound of gamelan. If you climb towards the top of Mount Salak, there is a mystical story of Mount Salak, namely the sound of gamelan. This is evidenced by the many stories from the community that mention that the climbers of Mount Salak heard the sound of gamelan that came from nowhere. Usually, climbers who hear the sound of the gamelan will be interested in finding the source of the sound. And eventually the climber disappeared and was difficult to find by the SAR team. Climbers are usually hypnotized to follow the sound of the gamelan. In addition to various mysteries and myths, Mount Salak is also rich in art and cultural values, especially from the surrounding community. Like the Saran Tan ceremony. The Saran Tan tradition is currently carried out by the community at an altitude of 1,200 meters and is right on the east side of Mount Salak. The purpose of the tradition or celebration of Saran Tan is a form of community gratitude for the harvest obtained. Then there is also a taboo on Salak fruit. The mystical story of Mount Salak is strengthened by the existence of a taboo that states that when we climb Mount Salak we don't ask about Salak fruit. The name of Mount Salak is taken from the Sanskerta language, namely Salaka, which means silver. Even though the origin of the name of this mountain has nothing to do with the Salak fruit, climbers are still not allowed to mention the Salak fruit or discuss matters related to the Salak fruit. This is considered a pride, and climbers who call Salak fruit will find it difficult to get to the top. Then there is a taboo on picking orchids. This taboo is that climbers are prohibited from picking orchids. The orchids on Mount Salak are indeed quite eye-catching. However, the people there believe that orchids are plants owned by supernatural beings on Mount Salak. The mystical story of Mount Salak is quite famous and widely believed by the surrounding community and also climbers who have explored it. Apart from all these stories being myths or facts, we as climbers or the public in general must respect the customs and habits that already exist on Mount Salak. And behind the various mystical stories and mysteries, the fact is that Mount Salak is a Type 1 stratovolcano, the highest peak, namely Peak Salak 1 is the oldest peak. Meanwhile, the peak of Salak II is 2,180 meters above sea level and is considered the second oldest. Next, the peak of Sumbul appears with an altitude of 1,926 meters above sea level. On Mount Salak there are a number of active craters that are not at the top. The largest crater, named Ratu crater, is the youngest crater. The Putri Sikuluwang crater and the Breathing crater are part of the Ratu crater system. Since the 1600s, there have been several eruptions on Mount Salak. Among them are a series of eruptions between 1668 and 1699, eruptions in 1780, 1902 to 1903, and also an eruption in 1935. The last eruption occurred in 1938 in the form of a phreatic eruption that occurred in the Sikuluwang Putri crater. According to records, the largest eruption occurred in 1699, which was a magical and destructive eruption. Morphologically, Mount Salak has many steep and deep ravines, because the entire body of Mount Salak reaches the top covered by dense forests. The contours of this mountain are not easy to see. This often deceives climbers and aviators who pass through the Salak mountain area. On the other hand, Mount Salak is also a mountain rich in endemic flora and fauna. Various wildlife is found on the slopes of Mount Salak, ranging from toads and frogs, reptiles, birds to rare mammals. There are recorded types of horned bongkong and flying frogs. Various types of reptiles, especially lizards and various types of snakes, are found on Mount Salak. Mount Salak has been known long before as an area rich in birds. More than 232 species of birds exist on this mountain. Some of the most important types of this mountain are Javanese eagles and several other types of eagles, red jungle chickens, horsebirds, and so on. Rare animals such as leopards, Javan gibbons, sarili, and also pangolins were also found. As for the climbing path to the top of Mount Salak, although it is classified as a low mountain, it has a fairly high level of difficulty. Both because of the characteristics of the vegetation and the terrain. Mount Salak can be climbed from several paths. The most frequently climbed peak is one of them. Another route is the back road through Sadahu Sukabumi or from Ratu crater near Mount Bunder. Mount Salak is very popular as an educational place for nature lovers clubs. Especially because this mountainous area is due to its dense forest terrain, and also rarely climbers visit this mountain. It also has a path that is quite difficult for beginner climbers because the path passed is rarely found with water reserves except at post 1 of the Ratu crater climbing path. However, at the top of one of them can be found a rainwater puddle. That's the legend of the origin of the mystical story of the mystery and also the myths that exist on Mount Salak. Look forward to the next episode. The story of those who feel the mystery of Mount Salak.